Hello everybody, Craig here on Shooter 71 channel. Just wanted to provide a instruction list of how to install a Mercury SmartCraft Connect module to your Lund boat and your Mercury outboard motor so you can get your engine data into your Garmin devices. I was looking for instructions or a part list of how to do this online, and since I wasn't able to find anything specific, I created a diagram and a parts list after talking to both Lund and Mercury and came up with all the components I needed to install, which I have just completed recently. I was not planning on doing an instruction video, otherwise I would have provided a better step-by-step instruction as well as images of all the components in a installed state. But I elected to do this after the fact, after I realized how much time I spent trying to learn how these things are put together, since I've never done it, as well as the components I needed to make this work. And since I could not find anything online, I figured at least this would get anyone looking to do the same, at least a starting point that they could work off of, because again, I spent a lot of time figuring out the right components. Just an FYI, in my conversations with Mercury, this currently works on connecting to a Garmin devices with getting the engine data out of their Mercury outboard motors. But he did mention in the near future that they will be restricting the data to only be able to be sent and read by their Mercury Brunswick devices, which I think is Simrad and Lowrance. Like everyone else, everyone is making their own compatibility products together, like Garmin Kraken and their Garmin devices, Minn Kota and Humminbird. Mercury is now also starting to control what data can be sent out and what can be read by which devices. So you'll eventually need to have at least one of their devices in the system in order for the engine data to be interpreted. So if you're going to follow this video, and depending upon the time, it's April 2025, you just may want to double check with Mercury if they're still sending out signals that can be read by other manufacturer devices. So like I said, I did not complete a step-by-step video, but I will show you a diagram that I created after talking to Lund and Mercury of what I needed and trying to provide at least the parts list for you, as well as a couple other pieces that I realized I needed after I got started. Now, the reason why I elected to use the SmartCraft Connect module that goes to the devices, that I wanted to be able to read the engine data off my Garmin devices all the time and not have to manually connect a module to my Bluetooth. There is a cheaper option, which is the SmartCraft Vessel View. I think it's about $300. It connects to your app. I understand it works pretty well. That one just gets installed under the engine cowl, but I wanted to use this device, all the time, so I can always see what the engine's doing, see what my gas flow and amount is. But more importantly, I did want to be able to use the engine troll control mode where I can drop the RPM down and troll with my Mercury engine. And I didn't want to pull up my phone and activate the Bluetooth to connect to the engine each time. I wanted that very easily accessible. So therefore I wanted to connect to the Garmin devices. Now, my dealer quoted about $1,700 to put this system in. My parts list is about $1,000. So if you're able to do this yourself, you'll get the same capability and save about $700, at least from what I did on the components that I found online through eBay and some parts at the dealer. Now, as I mentioned, I did not plan on doing a video, so I'm going to provide images and a diagram, and I'll walk through how I put this system together, and then I'll show you a couple of photos of where I installed the parts under the engine helm, and hopefully that will help you guys get started. Now, SmartCraft does make a number of different SmartCraft Connect module components. So they do make the vessel view, like I mentioned. They also make a separate, different SmartCraft Connect that goes under the engine cowl. That one, again, only connects through Bluetooth. And then they have the one that I bought, which is under the helm module. And then they have a number of others that I don't know what the differences are. So make sure you are buying the right SmartCraft Connect, because that is the most expensive component in this system. It's about $730, and you do obviously want to make sure that you buy the right one. So now I'm gonna turn up my video to the diagram of all the parts, and I'll walk through that. And then I will show you a couple of places where I installed the components, as well as some tips, at least if you're installing it on a 2025 model year Lund Impact 775, where you can find the cam line, at least to where it was on my boat as well. Back to the components that you need. So this is the visual diagram. I will also attach this in the video below, along with the parts list in case it helps. So the system that I was anticipating needing is, obviously I have my Mercury motor, and my boat, again, it's a Lund 775, has a CAN daddy harness that goes from the Mercury all the way up to the helm, not quite all the way under the helm, but close to the helm, where I was able to use the existing CAN line on the boat. Depending upon your model, you may actually have to buy your own CAN line that goes from the Mercury all the way to the helm. But I'll show you at least where mine was, where I tapped into it, so I did not have to buy this component. That CAN line then connects to this junction box. This is a 5-port junction box. It's about 1 foot long, so it's a relatively larger piece than I was expecting. But that is what the CAN line from the motor is going to go to. And then that's where everything starts plugging into. So the one thing you need, and I don't understand the technology on why some of these components are needed, so I'm just going to share what was required, and then you can go from there and hopefully make the install work as well. So for any junction box, you need a terminator. I think that blocks the signals of sorts, such that when the CAN line goes, it sends the signal to the right spot. So that is just a component that gets plugged into the junction box. This is the expensive component. This is the SmartCraft Connect gateway under the helm module. This one has the CAN line, so that CAN line will get connected directly into the junction box. This is a T connector that came with it. I did not use that. That's if you're splicing off the NMEA 2000 connection line. Another option that you need is this Garmin NMEA 2000. I elected to go with this multi-port T connector. I didn't need all these ports, but I figured in case I needed to expand in the future, I at least had it. So this T connector and this module have to be relatively close together, unless you're going to buy another extension line, as this cable that connects to the NMEA 2000 is only about 8 to 10 inches, so it's relatively short, and this has to connect into your T connector. I have these installed together or relatively close distance, so I did not have an extension cable. But if for some reason you need more distance between those two, you could certainly buy an extension cable, I am assuming. Now the T-port connector needs its own power source. So I bought the Garmin NMEA power cable, and that is connected on one of the outlets and then directly into my master power on the Lund boat. From the T-port connector, you also have the NMEA 2000 drop cable, and that actually goes to my Garmin device. Now, two pieces on my system that's not on this diagram that I learned while I started doing the install that I did need is that all multi-port or NMEA systems need 2 terminator resistance. They're caps, they're in the parts list down below. I have one male, one female, because these two I think are the male ends, and then all the ports coming down are female. So I bought a male terminator resistance plug and then a female terminator resistance plug. Again, it's similar to this junction box terminator where, again, I don't understand exactly how the electronics work, but it does require that for the communications to be correctly sent. So make sure if you're buying different types of T-connectors that you have enough space for these two terminator resistant plugs. You need two of them. I understand it doesn't matter if they're both male, both female. I used one of each, but you do need at least two in your system. The other component that I needed that I didn't realize that's not in this diagram, as I mentioned, this can line that's coming out of my Mercury that's going close to the helm has a female end on it. And what that is currently being used for on my boat is it drives the analog gauges. So I have the trim gauge and the RPM gauge under the helm, the manual analog gauges that are typically on boats. And that system gets its data from that can line. And the manual gauges that are under my helm had a male connector in that connected to this female line. And so when I unplugged that, so I could connect this into the junction box, I then had a male connection coming out of my manual under the helm gauges that I needed to connect into this junction box that also has only male ports on it. So I had to buy a female to female wire harness to connect the junction box to the cable can line that's going to the manual gauges. So it depends upon your system. I don't know if they have junction boxes that have both male and female ports on it. Maybe they do, and maybe that would have been a different alternative solution. But for me, I just ended up buying basically a short version of this, which is a female to female. It's a 3-foot long cable that went from the manual gauges on the boat to this junction box. That component that I bought is also on the parts list. The other component not on this diagram is, as I realized where this can line that's coming out of my boat currently under the helm, it did not have enough length for me to connect this end directly to the junction box and where I wanted to purchase it. So then I ended up buying a 3-foot extension, a male to a female, to connect these two. Again, depending upon your application, you may or may not need that. Again, this location of the terminator end on my boat, and I'll show it to you in a minute, it's down by the throttle, so it's not actually up under the helm. So I needed an extension. I don't know why they kept it down by the throttle instead of bringing it all the way into under the helm where it would be easily accessible, but that's where mine was, so I needed an extension to do that. As I mentioned, one of the options that I wanted on this system was to be able to activate the troll control for the motor to drop the RPMs. There is a troll control kit that basically can be a manual switch that you install onto your console, and then it also connects back to the junction box with a can line. I did not yet install that. I think my system having it accessible on my Garmin device will suffice, but since I bought the larger junction box with an open port, if I ever wanted to add this, or you want to add this now, you could do that right now. So I'm going to show you approximately where my can line was. Again, this is a 2025 Lund Impact. It does have the new dash. I would assume the other Lund Impacts are similar. But this did take a lot of effort because I did not want to open up this throttle plate on the new boat. I would assume if you would take this throttle plate off and remove this, you would have easy access and behind here where my can line came from the motor. So the can line comes from the back of the boat and it terminates about right here. And then it connects to the manual gauges there's a manual gauge can line that came from here and then it routes down here, and that connection is about right here. And you really have to be a contortionist to get your hand up through here or go around under the helm and up and around to try to access that point. I spent a lot of time trying to disconnect the CAN cable from the manual gauges. And then unfortunately, while I did not have a lot of room, that terminal of that CAN line coming back from the motor dropped down. So then it fell down here. So then I took this piece off to get access to it. I did have a bore scope so I could find it. I finally fished its way back up here so then I could connect it to my 3-foot extension. So now I have a 3-foot extension CAN line connecting to the terminator, which is behind this wall. And then it actually goes behind the helm. I would suspect for most, that's going to be difficult to access unless you have a bore scope and you can see where it is, or if you have smaller hands that can get back there, because then you have to reach around and it's not easy. Like I mentioned, I haven't done this. I would only suspect that if you took off this plate for the throttle, that would open all that space and that would make that process much easier for you. For me, I was able to take off this thing, get access to it on the bottom, reach my extension down below, connect the CAN lines and reach it back up, and that worked for myself. So now I'm going to show you where I ended up installing my components, just because, again, I did not want to try to do a lot with new platforms or mounting it to the boat too much. So you can see under my helm, this is the actual SmartWay Connect. You can see the green lights on. So I basically installed that underneath it. I zip tied it on the bottom of the junction box. This is the junction box. You can see the purple wires up on top here. So that's the actual foot-long junction box that all the CAN lines go into. And I just took zip ties. I tied the module to it in 3 spots. And then I bolted 2 of the screws of the junction box to the frame of under the helm on one side. I did not get the other side, but it's well positioned under there and it's not moving right now. So I believe that's going to be adequate to maintain the that junction box even during rush travel. Now my T-connector for my cam line, it's a little bit hard, but I actually just mounted it with zip ties to the top of the helm. You can see the yellow cable here. That's the power cord coming from the battery. That's the NMEA 2000 power cord. This is the multi-port junction box right up here. Again, it's kind of hard to see with the black on black. And then that's where all the NMEA 2000 cables are coming in from the SmartCraft Connect, as well as my Garmin device. And then, like I mentioned, the yellow is the power. For me, the power is just going up and then connecting into my power of under the helm of my master switch. So when I turn on the master switch, it turns on my Garmin devices, it turns on my NMEA 2000 backbone, as well as obviously the module for the SmartCraft Connect, because the SmartCraft Connect is getting power from this NMEA 2000. It's, again, not easy to see because it's kind of black right up on top here where I'm pointing. If you can see that, probably not because of the camera angle, is that terminator resistor that I talked about, that you need 2 of them in order for that backbone to work. You can see it right here a little bit. So now that you have all the components, and I would certainly suggest you connect all the components like I did, where everything is not installed and just, out in the open. So when you're starting to test the system, you can make sure everything is working. Like that is how I found out I did not have a terminator resistor, and I needed that. I ended up calling Garmin, and they confirmed that yes, that's the missing component. Since I'm not familiar with NMEA 2000 systems, that was new for me. But the process now to connect the SmartCraft to your Garmin device was relatively simple. There is a Mercury app that has an engine gear on it, and I think it's called Mercury Connect. So I installed that one first, and that is what the instructions said. To install that, connect your phone to the Mercury Connect gateway, check for any software updates, and then that is where you can start entering your engine serial number, the amount of gallons of fuel that your boat has, as well as some other metrics. And then you could actually confirm that the phone is connecting to your engine correctly. Of course, you need to have your engine power on or your ignition switch on. You don't have to have it started. You just have to have the key on. And you won't obviously get RPM or any of the other engine data, but you will tell that the system is connecting to the device. Now, when I tried to connect my SmartCraft Connect to my phone, it connected very easily to Bluetooth. And then the next step was to connect it via Wi-Fi to do any software checks. For some reason, even though in my garage I had 4 bars of Wi-Fi of signal, I got 3 different Wi-Fi signals, 5 hertz, 2.4, as well as a secondary Wi-Fi signal. All 3 of them on my phone are 3 bars. The SmartCraft Connect really struggled to connect to any of the Wi-Fi signals. I wasn't clear about the graphics on the app, but now I am. And it was actually showing that I was not getting any bars from any of my Wi-Fi systems, even though I'm relatively close and getting very good signal on my house. A little concerned that I have a defective module. But however, I grabbed one of my satellite Orbi routers. I brought it right into the garage. So I was about 10 feet away. I finally got 2 to 3 bars, and I was finally able to connect to the SmartCraft Connect system. So if you're struggling to connect with Wi-Fi, you may want to look at that. I did talk to Mercury, and they implied that it could be an issue with my device. It's possible that there's something else going on, but he did not imply that I actually need Wi-Fi a lot to potentially do system updates. So I wasn't going to go to try to return the item and troubleshoot it, because now that the system is all connected to my boat, unless I'm doing software updates, and right now you said there isn't any, I'm not sure how often I'd actually use the Wi-Fi Connect module, because once it's installed in your boat, and you're either going to use your phone app, which is going to connect through a Bluetooth, or you'll connect it like I am through my Garmin devices, which is using the new NMEA 2000, so it really wasn't needed. But just be aware of that I struggled to connect to Wi-Fi. After you're done with all that, the app is actually different from what you actually want to use. If you're going to use an app from your phone using the SmartCraft Connect, you'll want to use the app called Mercury Marine, which is a black logo with white letters. He said that's the one you should be using anyway. He said you should delete the other one because he has heard that some people have conflicts between the 2 apps. I haven't yet experienced that, but again, I'm not using the app a whole lot to test the motor or even run the motor yet. So now that all that has been set up on the SmartCraft Connect app, and I confirmed that the Mercury Marine app on my phone was working, I then come to my Garmin devices and try to make sure that the signal was indeed coming to my Garmin device. So now I have it set up on the phone. My system was all powered up on the NMEA connection. I then came to my Garmin device. This is the one that I actually have the NMEA 2000 cable coming from that backbone from underneath my helm. So when I went into my Garmin device and I hit gauges, I now have a new screen called Mercury, and you can click the Mercury and then you can see the screen. Of course, the miles per hour and the RPM is 0. I believe the miles per hour are coming from the GPS of my phone. I'm not 100% certain on that because there's nothing that the motor can send for miles per hour. And there was a setting in the app about using your phone. So I'm not exactly sure how it's using the miles per hour. I should probably check with Mercury on that. But you can see the trim level at 9.5. So that is obviously reading what my system is. Currently my gallons are 0 and it shows them in neutral. And you can see at the top I have 12.1 volts. So it is reading the data. There's a lot of other data you can have on this if you so choose, and go through different menus. On my Garmin device, I set up a separate screen with my map screen where you now can have your GPS speed and all your other engine data metrics. Right now I set up with the miles per gallon, how many gallons I have remaining, the coolant pressure, the engine trim, and the 12.1 volts. Now, for some reason on the Mercury Marine, the trim level at 2.9 is a different, I'll say variable or units than the engine trim. Engine trim 57% means I'm 50% up from 100 of what's allowed. I actually prefer the 2.9, but I can't seem to figure that out of how to change that. If you select menu, I think it's edit overlays. Edit layout, and you can press any one of these, and then you can go into the numbers of your engine and pick any other metric data that you want to show. So you're not limited to just what I selected. I'll probably tweak that as I learn more, but that's currently the engine metrics that I'm looking for. Now, I also put under my menu, I think it's edit overlays, top bar. So top bar, I have Mercury Troll. And right now, I expect, I haven't ran this yet, that once I am running the engine, there's going to be a engine Troll option up here where I could select it and then engage the engine control mode, as well as then change the RPM. So that's using my Garmin device instead of that manual button on my visual diagram. The other option to just be aware that if you didn't want to have the side, at least on the Garmin's, the side engine metrics, if you went into the edit overlays, you could do bottom bar and you can hit Mercury data, and then you could have some level of engine data right on your screen like this instead of the screen on the right. But I just prefer to have a little bit bigger visual of my navigation, and then I'll have my engine metrics on the back. And again, I'm sure every other system is different on that, if you're using Garmin or not, but that's how Garmin worked. So that probably was not as satisfying as a lot of the other YouTubers that do an excellent job of a step-by-step install. Again, I'm not doing a YouTuber video for that purpose. I don't really care if you subscribe or not. I guess if you don't like someone, you can send them the link and say, hey, watch this. This is really cool, when you really don't think it is. But I'm just trying to do it to provide someone some basic instructions, at least a parts list, and not have to spend the amount of time that I did to try to figure this out, being new to all this. So hopefully if it gets you pointed in the right direction, that's great. If you want to ask any questions or send any communications to me, you feel free. I'll try to answer them. But so far, I haven't ran the boat, but I suspect everything is going to work as planned because I'm getting the engine data up on my Garmin devices as expected. Just an FYI, I wasn't aware of this because I do have my two Garmin devices. Behind that visual diagram is my second Garmin device. I was expecting that the engine data would be on both, so I could potentially switch screens, like run maps on one side, then the full engine data screen on the second screen, because I do have them networked together. But I was surprised when I went to my second screen, I did not see the engine data. I'm guessing I have to run a second NMEA 2000 cable to that. Maybe there's another solution, but right now, just be aware that if you got 2 screws like I do, that you will only see it on where your NMEA 2000 cable is connected to your device. So hopefully that helps. Take care and happy fishing. Thanks.